Welcome to episode 13 of the Necronama.com. We are less than a week away from Halloween. You probably don't know this, but this is where originally season 1 of the Necronama.com was going to come to an end. Now we're loving it. We're going to keep doing it every single week because you guys keep downloading it. So let's just say that this week, and every week, let's be realistic, is brought to you by fans of horror who keep coming back, downloading our episodes, and reminding us that people really do care about the social commentary found in horror films. Happy Halloween to all of you from all of us at thenecronama.com. Also, all of us is 2 people, and whoever our guests are. But we still love you. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now.
And I am Don Guillory, co-host of the Necronomic.com, author, historian, and still living in Mississippi, so you can't scare me.
Wow, we went there that early today. That's exciting. So today we have a special guest, MichaelBrent Collings. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and, plug some books or whatever else you got going on, man?
Sure. So my name's MichaelBrent Collings, and just to get it out of the way, yes, my first name is Michael Brent, because my parents hated me before I was born. They're like, how can we make his life miserable on the playground?
No. They were like, social media, you're going to love this. If anybody Googles Michael Brent, boom, there you are.
Yeah, except for there's a dude whose name is Michael Space Brent, who's like an underwear model. And I am forever worried people are going to walk up at a Comic-Con and be like, I was so excited. Wait, you're disgusting. It's going to be a real expectation issue. So I'm a horror author. I'm an international bestseller, and I'm constantly working on new stuff. I'm best known for horror, I should say. I have bestsellers in fantasy, sci-fi, thriller, all that other stuff. And as for what I'm working on right now, today is my birthday, so my wife is making me not do anything after this. And then I have a new book coming out on Halloween called Scavenger Hunt.
Awesome. Well, happy
birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We'd sing to you, but we hate singing and you don't want to hear it. So it all works out.
I'm willing to take you at your word. You guys just don't look like good singers.
We're not. We're definitely not. That's why we have an audio only podcast as well.
There you go.
Well, that's James. I didn't want to break it to you. That was for you, man. I didn't.
Jeez.
Look, I'm not going to opine on which of you is the pretty one because, frankly, I'm a little turned on by both of you, and I just don't want to, I don't want to block off any of my choices for later.
Hey, man,
a lot because we offer so many different choices.
Gender and sexuality is a spectrum.
I think Adam Sandler said it best. White meat, dark meat, you just can't lose.
Oh man!
All right, so now that we've set the tone for this podcast,
all right, we've covered everybody who's going to be offended should be gone by now.
And as you said that, my fucking Infinity Gauntlet just fell off the bookshelf and hit me.
Thanos does not like your racism.
He did not like that joke there.
That's awesome.
So tell me about this book coming out on Halloween.
It's pretty cool. It's a group of 5 people who wake up in this white room with no doors and no windows. And they're on hospital gurneys, and they look over, and there's 5 other hospital gurneys with mannequins dressed just like them. And a screen on the wall pops open, and it's this guy in a smiley face, like the emoji mask, only it's covered in blood. And he says, "Hi, I'm Mr. Do-Good, and we'll be playing a game today." And he sends them on this scavenger hunt, only instead of like find a ball or do this or that, it's really progressively worse and worse things they have to do. And the reason the mannequins are there is to demonstrate what happens if they refuse, which is awful, and I won't spoil it, but mannequins are not happy by the end of that scene.
That's awesome. So what's it called?
Scavenger Hunt.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. What have I been doing? I was in the Dark Side in Riverside this past week. It was a great convention. I ended up hanging out with Tony Todd and Michael Berriman. The week before that, we were in LA Comic-Con. That was great. We got to meet Jay and Silent Bob and some other people, and Don got to just chill in the back behind the main stage and interact with all kinds of people. He was probably smoking cigars with Ron Perlman or something. I don't know. What were you doing back there?
I was missing out on an opportunity to take a selfie with one of my college crushes, which was the one and only
Ron
Rosario
Perlman?
Dawson. Well, yes. It was my second crush. Yeah, Rosario Dawson. There was like a K-pop group doing some choreography or something, and there was this lady dancing in front of them. So I thought it was their teacher, their choreographer or whatever. Turns around, it's Rosario Dawson. I go to get my phone out to take a selfie, and she is gone. Behind the makeup tent, getting ready to go on stage. I'm like, son of a bitch.
You do have that effect on women.
You know what? I kind of do. Anyway.
Well, but you know what? You basically just said they see him and go and get their makeup on. That was a compliment. It's like they want to be pretty for you.
Aw, you're so nice. That's not what I meant at all.
No,
Yeah,
I figured. I don't really believe it either, but let's not have tears this early in the show, right?
I think she found out I was married and she's with Cory Booker, and it just can't work out now. So
There you go.
I respect her relationship. She respects mine.
That's good. That's happy. I like that. All right. So I guess we're here to talk about some film. Insidious, maybe?
Awesome.
Let's start with Michael, you chose the film. So why did you choose Insidious?
I really like the movie. I have always gravitated. I will watch the slasher flicks that come on TNT at 2 a.m, along with any other red-blooded American person, and I find them silly fun and all that good stuff. But I've always really enjoyed a well-done PG-13 horror movie because I love the fact that they're kind of boxed in creatively, and so they have to find sort of more ingenious ways to give us fear and to impart that sense of terror. They can't have somebody with a chainsaw cutting off limbs, so how are they going to give me that same level of fear? And Insidious did that. I love it. To this day, I went with my wife, and she won't see it again. She just got too freaked out. And we were talking to one of my kids about it yesterday. It's like, Dad's going to do a podcast, because I have to tell everyone, like, shut up, don't scream, even if you're being beaten, because people can hear that and it sounds bad. So on
this show, it works really well. Feel free to scream.
I'll tell my wife to take him out of the basement, which is soundproofed. So she goes, oh, why are you going to talk about that? And the thing that came to mind immediately was there was this moment in the beginning of the movie where the main character Rose Byrne goes up to her baby's room, and the camera kind of pans across, and it's not a jump out at you, but there's a face in the window, and she doesn't even see it. Well, I'm in the theater, and I always love scoring in the theater, the seat right behind the handicap area, because it's got that cool like metal gate bar thing, and I put my feet up on it because I will slouch in any public place. So my feet are up on that thing, and I'm watching, and even though I'm a horror writer and I write screenplays and all that, I totally get into these movies. So I'm watching, and that face happens, and my legs and my arms both shot straight up in the air, and I went boo like that. So I mean, half the audience was like right there with me, scared. They're going, "Oh, this is so scary," and the other half, like the 3 rows on either side of me, are going, "Someone save the poor epileptic kid," because it was really.
He's scared of babies.
It was so funny. I knew it was the second it happened. It was one of those things like, well, it's a good thing I'm married, because no one in here will ever view me in anything approaching in a sexy way. They'll just be worried I'm going to like fall down and curl up like a roach, because that is all but what happened. So I just love the movie. It's a lot of fun, and it's got some really effective scares, and it changed the way we presented ghosts, and that and The Conjuring. I mean, they were trendsetters for demonic spirits for a decade.
One of the big things you just mentioned was the PG-13 aspect. And my one complaint with PG-13 is the one F-bomb. Anyone who's listened to this podcast knows I can't do one F-bomb. I'm literally like, good fucking morning, fucker. I'm incapable of that. But that's the only thing that bothers me about it, because in these situations, I refuse to believe anybody's walking around going, oh, gosh darn. Outside of that, I love PG-13 horror. And I think it's crazy whenever everyone bitches about, oh, that one's PG-13, so you know it's not any good. Like you said, I think you have to work so much harder to find fun ways to make it work. But the other part I like about it is that you're appealing to that younger audience as well. And we are trying to scare the shit out of them. And we are trying to get them to buy tickets in the future or buy our books or whatever else, or even just influence the next generation. Yeah. You know? So, I mean, I think it's great. My one thing, like I said, is the F-bomb rule.
So the F-bomb, I get what you're saying. I will say I'm not an F-bomb guy. Like my wife and I actually went to an amusement park. And they this last week, and they have this scary Halloween show, and we had to buy extra tickets to get in. And I had a friend who's like, it's like nothing you've ever seen before, which to me is code for I've never seen anything good before, you know. But we go in there, and it scared the crap out of me. And at one point, they turn off all the lights. And the people working the show actually have infrared goggles. And so they're doing crap to you with the lights off. And this doll head lights up right 6 inches in front of me. Because my friend who's a prick, he's like, hey, that guy's a horror author. Scare him. And
I like your friend.
He was awesome. And it lights up right in front of me. And I'm not a big cusser, right? But I'm in a room full of lots of people. And the only thing that comes out is shit. Really, I mean, like the loudest voice in the whole place. So I don't have a big problem with the F word thing. I kind of hate it when they put one in and it's like, let's do the mandatory F word. That's almost more offensive.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because there's no reason for it. But you're right. I love that it's for kids. I mean, for younger people, everyone who's ever bitched about, I hear it a lot in the horror community. It's like Stephanie Meyer's the worst human who ever lived. And I'm going, you know what? She got 10 million little girls reading. God bless her. And hopefully they use Twilight as a gateway drug. So even if this movie isn't your cup of tea, hopefully it introduces you to bigger and better things.
I couldn't say that better myself. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
So, Don, what do you love about Insidious?
This is going to sound funny. The ending. And not as far as like, hey, the credits roll and got done with this movie. I like the way that it gives you that ending to where it could be a sequel. Right. Doesn't have to be a sequel. Yeah. Because all you're thinking is like, oh, shit. He killed Elise. Spoiler alert. I have to keep that going. He killed Elise. And now, the thing is going to continue on. So kind of like whatever that movie was, Fallen with Denzel Washington, where the spirit at the beginning of the movie tells you the ending, but he's so cool and so smooth about it, you don't realize what's taking place until the ending of the movie. And kind of the same thing here. You don't know where it could possibly go. Yeah. At least for the next film, until the next film takes place. But you don't need that next film in order to still kind of have that shock factor of, holy shit, something else is going to take place here.
Yeah.
The nightmare's not over.
Yeah. I love self-contained stories that at the end they go, but there's a wider world. Like if we do this again, and it's about money, but I like the feeling that the producers are back there going, so there's more. And if you pay us, we will show you that stuff, Yeah. I don't like coming out going, that didn't end. There's a difference between an ending and a stopping point. And I hate when movies just stop. But a movie that ends and then does, what Insidious, it's like, okay, so the family did their thing, the kid got out, everything they achieved their goal, even though there was some problems. And one of the problems, guess what? It's this huge new opportunity. And that's so cool.
Yeah, and I hated if it had ended with, Dalton's okay and everything's fine, the ghost is gone, it would have completely ruined the movie for me. Because there shouldn't be that happy end, like that completely happy ending within a horror film. There should still be that tension at the end. Because even with James loves the Jigsaw movies or the Saw movies, and even the first Saw movie could have just ended there. No franchise after it could have ended there because the game has been played out. This guy won.
Yeah. Many people who are not me would argue that it should have ended there.
Oh, I totally. So when I will talk sometimes about the history of horror, like conventions or writing conferences or whatever. And one of the things I say, first of all, is that most people who say they don't like horror, they're incorrect because they don't know enough about horror not to like it. What they don't like is horror movie posters, which is kind of their idea of what horror is. And those are designed to be graphic and scary and kind of grisly. And so I can't blame them. But whenever I talk about history, I go, there was a kind of horror that came about in the early 2000s. Everyone goes torture porn. And I say, what was the first torture porn movie that, put it on the map? Everyone says Saw. And I'm like, that is 100% incorrect. Absolutely. Every Saw movie that came after it was a torture porn movie, but Saw was a morality play that had some violence in it. And it's a much different monster. And the reason the other ones kind of devolve is because Hollywood can't reproduce character as well the second time necessarily. Character's always like, hopefully we get it right this time. But you can sit a bunch of executives down and go, okay, we can figure out traps. And that's why none of the other Saw movies have anything remotely approaching a memorable character, but people remember their favorite trap.
Right.
I mean, even as somebody who loves the franchise, excuse me, it's about the traps. Like, there's no well thought out anything, really. There's a lot of revisionist history, which is kind of fun to examine in and of itself. But like, nobody's sitting here. Like, who do I love? I love Hoffman. Hoffman's one of my favorite characters, right? Hoffman's not a well-made character. He's just fun. It's like Jason. Jason doesn't have a huge personality. You remember him because he's fun. So kind of along that same line.
And I definitely doesn't have a catchphrase.
No, not at all. I have to admit, too, that the longer they dragged on, and I know, and unlike you, I'm going to say spoiler alert before I say the spoiler. I thought that was fantastic. She dies at the end. Spoiler alert for anybody who's listening in the future and thinking about time travel. I
call him on this every week.
I do it intentionally just for that.
I love it. But, the first couple movies, I'm just sitting there going, the first movie I bought, second movie, I can't remember when he actually dies, but the more it's going in. Okay, so the second and third, I'm sitting there going like, this is the liveliest, horribly terminally ill person I've ever seen. Like, I can't help my kid put together a basic Lego house using 10 blocks or more. And this dude's out there welding gears and, building entire warehouse traps. I'm like, that dude, I would have liked to see him in his Hale and Hardy days, because that would have been like watching frickin' Hercules.
I feel like he should have been way more successful while he was healthy.
Right. Like Bill Gates did it, and he just outsourced all the traps to India as he was going downhill. That I could totally believe.
Well, I feel like that's what they were trying to do. By the time they got to like 6, they were like, no, see, he had these apprentices and they were doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
and the problem with that too is it devalues all the first ones. It's like
it does.
I do like the wider world thing, but you also run the risk of, like, I love the Ender's Game. This isn't horror, but I love the Ender's Game series. And then there's a follow-on series called Ender's Shadow, which is about one of the side characters in the first book. And it turns out he's doing all this stuff behind the scenes, which is cool to find out about. But if your hero is Ender, and then finding out who's the main character of the first series, and then finding out Ender was A, not as smart as he thought, B, wasn't doing as much as he thought, C, didn't accomplish some of the main things, I'm like, well, that's cool to say that, but it also eviscerates my joy of that series. So, that's the other problem you run into whenever you get these bigger worlds, is it needs to be a bigger world, not just a smaller re-examination of the first well-done moment.
Right. Like, as long as we're talking about Saw, I'm just going to throw this in really fast. But I think, like, the one place that I really like the wider world is when Hoffman is trying to kill the guy that killed his sister, I think it is. And so he uses a Jigsaw-like trap. Yeah. So that Jigsaw will get blamed instead of him. Right. That's the wider world I love. That's fucking cool. But the overall concept, I just enjoy it. There's a difference,
And that's another reason I do like the Insidious movies, is because they do. Insidious 2 in particular, I know we're not talking about that one per se today, but like the way it circles back into the first one, you find out reasons behind things that take zero away from the first movie. It adds more to it. Yeah. And then the third one, it's like, hey, let's find out what leads up. And obviously they've got to keep Lynn Shay because she's the best part. So they're going to continue rewriting the series so that it can take place in universes where she's alive, be that before the first movie happened or in some alternate timeline or in whatever they do. But every single one of those, none of them took something for the first movie and said, you fundamentally misunderstood it, and here's why it really sucked.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a strength of the movies. And like you said, Lin Shaye is the heart of these movies. So I feel like the third and fourth are really cool to me, because then we get like the backstory with Specs and his buddy.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name.
I can't
but anyway,
remember his name either.
But like you get the backstory with them and how they met her and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's really, really well done and cool.
Right?
And it's a definite strength of these movies. And if anything, it strengthens the first movie, which is what they should do instead of what they do normally.
Yes. It informs it rather than turning it, rather than peeling it away and saying, again, I think it's really like you want to, as an audience, I want to understand more. I don't want to find out I misunderstood. That's not fun. It's like, holding up the first movie and going, ha ha, you were an idiot. Now we're going to show you why. Nobody likes that. And then to find out I paid $12 plus popcorn, that's even less fun.
Yep. And if you look at the Saw series, since we're comparing to that, like one of the big downfalls of the Saw series is there's so much explanation of shit you didn't need to explain.
Oh,
like,
my gosh.
Here's how we knocked him out so he could lay there for the whole first movie. Spoiler, says Don.
Right.
It really kills it for me. Horror needs questions. Questions are what makes your brain keep working on horror and keeps that fear alive.
Well, and with Saw, it's like they did a table read and found out the movie was 40 minutes long, and they're like, crap, we already laid out all the traps and we figured that out. So can someone talk about something? Sure, let's explain what's happening for the next 40 minutes. And I love how even though it's an explanation, it's always got the driving like Matrix beat, like you're watching some rad beat down on. It's like and I'm going like, whoa, this is the most exciting rave exposition I've ever heard.
I will say though, it's effective. Like that song, like gets me hyped up. So I think if you took that song out, that would just be terrible. Like if you ever analyzed it on mute, I think it would be a totally different experience. And I'm going to do that at some point now.
That's rad. Or do it with even the first movie with subtitles. Because I do remember like when he walks out at the end, and I'm not going to say who, because I didn't say spoiler alert. But when a person walks out at the end, spoiler alert, some of us won't say spoiler alert until the end, spoiler alert. See, I spoiler alerted the spoiler alert about the spoiler alert on both sides. And yes, that sentence makes sense. Anyone who wants to replay it and parse it out. Anyway, so
Don't worry,
I'll
listen to it at least 4 times before I post it.
Right, you're like, this is bitching. That very end moment when he walks out and that music cranks, I was like, oh yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna go be friends with that terrifying dude,
right?
Because music.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, Insidious has something kind of similar. It's not exactly music, but the metronome, the little ticking all the time.
And it does have music. It's got that crazy squeaky violin sound that's very it's very it cuts against itself and it's grating. It's very cacophonous on a certain level. What I like to think of it is they took Ring, which is another great PG-13 movie, although I watched that one recently and it has not held up as well. But they took the Ring soundtrack, which was full of these very light violin and string instruments, and they took that and it's like, okay, so let's use all of these same basic notes, but put them on top of each other. And so when it hits your ears, it's intentional, but it is creepy because it doesn't quite work. I mean, it's like the reason so many creepy dolls are in scary movies is they're disquieting, and they've actually done like scientific studies on it. And the thing that's disquieting is they're so close to being accurate, but a little bit off. And we find that worse than if somebody is hideously burned. Like if someone's eyes are just 2 inches in the wrong spot, that's way creepier than if they're missing an ear, And so I think they did that with the music. It's just the right amount of wrong. And I do remember, again, being in the theater, and they had the great opening credit scene.
Oh, man, I love that scene.
Oh, so good. It sets this like eerie, low key, but like it essentially tells you everything that's going to be in the movie, which is great when you watch it the second time. And then it fades and that huge stinger of violins comes on. And I remember being freaked out and also being like, whoa, that was the cheesiest thing that's ever gotten me ever.
Yeah, definitely. No, that did more for me than jump scares at all.
Totally.
Like, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess I haven't answered why I love Insidious. So I'm going to go with the most controversial thing that is with Insidious, because that is why I love it. So about a third from the end of the movie, the film takes this weird ass turn.
Totally. I loved it.
And people either seem to really love it or they're like, what the fuck was that? And there's no in between. And for me, I don't even care which side you're on. I love it, but I don't care which side you're on. I love that they had the balls to do something different. They went for a ghost story. They set the scene, and then they just twisted the living shit out of it. And oh my God, fantastic. I'm not sure what's up with skinny Darth Maul, but other than that, just brilliant. So, and then I want to add that Tiptoe Through the Tulips has been forever ruined for me. It is one of the most terrifying songs to hear anywhere that I am. It was on in the grocery store one day, like, 10 years after I saw the film, or however long it's been. And I'm still like, motherfucker, what's going on?
I know. Right, dude, there's a red guy right behind the Cheetos. I know it.
And then I'm like, what the hell are you playing this in a grocery store for?
Right, that's the day that somebody's quitting and he's like, screw it, I'm putting on what I want today, and it's going to mess everybody up.
Some guy just starts playing like the Jason theme or some different stuff.
Yeah.
Hit that violin sound.
Aisle 6.
Kill. Clean up in aisle 6.
That would be the best. That would be the best. I would go there forever after that, just on the off chance that they did that again. Yeah, but Insidious, the three things that I thought that it did that were really four things. One was, this was the least of them, is they rewrote the seance. I mean, like, the seance scene was so effective in that movie, and it's almost mandatory. We've got to have the medium reach out, and you've seen it a million times. And as soon as she puts that gas mask on, I'm like, what? I was so excited because I knew they were going to make something new of it. The second thing that they did was having that demon, that red-faced, non-anthropomorphic demon. I mean, there's all these other scary ghosts. And then, there's cloven-hoofed Maul. It is the weirdest thing, and it totally works.
I love him when he goes climbing on the walls. That is amazing. Well,
and the first time you see him right behind Patrick Wilson in the middle of the day, it's a brightly lit shot.
Yep.
And that was another one. Feet and hands straight up in the air. Ah! I loved it so much. The third thing that they did was, I love that they moved. It's like, just leave the house is what we're all screaming at so many haunted house movies. And they did. They took a logical step and they're like, all right, peace out. We're gone. This is not okay. It's not worth whatever equity we're building.
Yep.
And then, the fourth thing was the further, which I thought was fantastic, is, taking us, we're always trying to bring the ghost into our world and going into theirs. It was really gutsy. And it's foreshadowed enough that, for me at least, I wasn't like, whoa, this came out of nowhere. But it was still surprising, the level at which they did it. And just so much about the interactions was so good. The guy whistling right when Patrick Wilson goes in, and you just hear him. And then Patrick Wilson goes up and sees the guy with his lips pursed, but no sound coming out. Oh, so good.
I love the the whole little family that's sitting in their little living room, and the girls with the tilted necks and the smiles.
Yeah.
It's so well done. Like, it does such a good job of what you were kind of talking about with the dolls, where it's creepy because it's slightly off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love to, because I watched it again actually this morning, because it is my birthday, and I'm a horror writer, so I get to watch stuff for my job. It's rad. I was watching it, and one of the weirdest, I think most attention grabbing details is, if you watch the ghosts, they all have normal human sway. That is, it's impossible to actually sit still or stand still. The guy who's holding the newspaper who was whistling, there's little tremors in his hands, but they're holding so still. And I remember being in the theater watching, going, are they like going to move, or are they stopped, or, is this a time stop? No, it can't be, because they're moving a little. And it added again that whole level of like unsettling, disturbing lack of faith about what could possibly come next.
Michael Brent, more people should give you money. That was amazing.
Thank you.
You mentioned them moving out of the house. And when I was watching it with my wife, we both looked at it and like, is that fucking easy? Is that fucking easy? Really? You're just going to move? It was like, no, it's not going to end here. And I like the idea that, you know, the wife, as opposed to you drag it on the entire movie, like, oh, I don't feel comfortable in this house. Oh, baby, it's nothing. You know, it's just an old house. It creaks. You're just seeing things.
Right.
And, you know, how it's been done in so many other movies.
Or we've wrapped up all of our money in this. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I just saw this
standard.
I'm like, wait a second. This is a one-income household. You got 3 kids. The dad's a teacher. You just bought the house, or I'm assuming you bought the house.
And you probably have American insurance, so that kid's medical bills are killing it.
Forget it. Yeah.
So for me, that was the part it took me out, because I'm kind of like, I don't believe any of this shit. Maybe they're already dead and they're imagining that they're moving from the house. Yeah, it just took me out of it for a minute, but I was like, no, I got to go back in it, because it's going to go from ghost story to demons. Let's go back into this movie. But
go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say, here's what I hear what you're saying, you know, and anybody, especially if you have a family, you're like, yeah, it's not just a week later or anything. But here's what I really liked about it, and the thing that sold that moment in retrospect, because I remember feeling the same way. I'm like, wow, they just moved, you know, and it was a little jarring, because it's a process, you know. But the things that I liked that sold it for me, number one going in is, and this is something Lee Winnell or Wannell, I don't even know how you say it, the screenwriter who plays Specs, he does really well writing about and in a non-political way. So don't hear this as like a conservative statement, but like family values, you know. Part of the disconnect with so many slasher movies is they tend to be about hot teens banging in the woods. And I've never been any of that. I've never been a hot teen, and I've certainly never banged in the woods. So it's about somebody else, you know, who has no relation to me, you know, and none of my friends were ever that. At least one of 2 of those they didn't have. And, but everyone has a family. Everyone has people that they care about, not physically, but emotionally. And Lee Winnell does a great job with that. And so they had set up that the tragedy of this isn't the haunting, it's that it took their little boy, and that it's messing up their other kid, and their baby is crying, which is, I mean, for any parent, we have been out of baby territory in my house for 5 years, and I still hear ghost baby cries every once in a while, like just at a moment where you would expect it. I go, is the baby crying? Oh, no, wait, we don't have any babies. That's okay. There's no noise, you know, but you're geared to hear that. And so I thought it was great that he did such a good job creating this family that mattered. And then the thing that came after it that I was like, that is just wonderful, is where she's screaming, you don't believe me. And she is legitimate in her upset, you know, and I would be upset at any of his responses as well. And he you know, I don't feel like you love me or whatever. And he goes, I moved houses for you. And in that was, I love you. Of course I'm following you. Just because I can't see it doesn't mean I don't support you.
Right.
And it also packed in the fact that it wasn't just one scene to another, which we got in the movie. It was like, look, I upended my universe because that's how much I love you. And I actually sat up in the theater, and I'll do this occasionally. My wife hates it. I go like, that was a good line. Like, she needs me to point it out, honey, because you're too dumb to watch this movie. I'm going to point out the good lines. Also occasionally costuming that I find appropriate, you know. But I sat up. That was a good line, because it said everything that had just happened and put it in the context of somebody who adores his family, but also has to operate within the universe of money, and we can't just move again, honey.
Like, the more I'm thinking about it, number one, I'm glad they didn't do a scene where they're house hunting, because how boring would that shit be?
Right.
Or like the true horror of signing that contract when you buy a house.
Playing the violin music over the top of it. Do you have the earnest money?
Now watch us sign all 200 spots that we have to sign. Right. But like
points up front.
No, but I'm reminded of just how tired he looks after that point, you know?
And
that's such
work.
Yeah. And it's such a nice nod to, it's not just the ghost. Like, life is draining the shit out of him in every direction, whether it's his kid, whether it's this weird stuff that's happening, or his wife freaking out. And even if you don't believe it, like, there's a part of you that your brain's working on that stuff, you know? So all of that is just draining. And then he's dealing with the real world crap of buying a new house or renting a house or whatever they're doing, and he's still working, and he's doing all these things, and they do such a good job of just showing him utterly exhausted without grinding it into us, you know?
Yeah.
And then the key to that is then when it goes to where it goes, he's already beaten down. Like, so he's going in at a disadvantage, and I love that.
One of the greatest scenes is not a scary scene. It is the scene where they've brought Dalton home, and the long-term care nurse is teaching the mom how to intubate. Yeah. Because that says it's been long enough. We're not monitoring him every day. That's like hopeless crap there. And I actually had a friend who was quadriplegic, and a great friend of mine had a hand in getting my wife and I together. He passed away a couple years ago, and I was just heartbroken. And I remember going to his house. The reason it's not like I'm the greatest human in the world. The reason I think he liked me was I visited him, you know, and a lot of people didn't, because that's kind of an uncomfortable situation. What do I do with a person who can't move anything but his head? But I thought he was cool. So I showed up and I said, can I take you to a movie? Like, I'll drive your van that's been converted and stuff. Totally lit up. And the first thing he said, though, was, you got to talk to my dad. And he's in his 30s, you know, so I'm going like, that's weird. But his dad needed to teach me how to intubate him in case he needed his tube changed, or in case, you know, he started to choke, which is something that happens with quadriplegic people at his level, because, you know, their synapses don't fire right and tell them to swallow properly. And I remember going over through the whole process, and the dad's just doing it. Blah, 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 blah. Matter of factly, like, he didn't just bear a hole in his son's neck and isn't jamming this foreign object into his child. And I am like taking notes, and I'm freaked out. What if I touch the sterile part of the tube? I'm going to kill Shane, you know? And so watching that scene, I went, that's the perfect moment to show how hopeless things are. And then to cut almost immediately to nighttime, putting the babies down. And it's exactly what you said. It's like, they've got a kid in a coma. They've got a haunted house. The baby still has to be fed every 3 hours.
Right.
Which is such a crushing thing, especially if you've got kids. Because even just thinking about the feeding schedule, I like kind of want to kill myself.
Oh, yeah. No, like, anybody that's been through it, that in and of itself is so draining. Because you're never sleeping. Like, you're never getting a full night's sleep. And if my wife is listening, I am not comparing my life to yours in any damn way. But no, like, nobody's sleeping. So yeah, they do such a great job of showing him exhausted without drilling it down our throats.
Yeah, and that way it really is that much harder. And that's one of the things I tell. So I'm a really religious person, which is a surprise to people. Like, oh, you write horror in your religion. I am the Sunday school president in my congregation. So I do get occasionally that question, like, how can you write that and also be the Sunday school guy? And what I tell people is horror exists to cut your heart out and toss it in a ditch. So, like, the only thing down there in the darkness is you. There's not your car, there's not your support system, there's none of the stuff that's really external that we're trained to think of as definitions. You know, we define ourselves by jobs, we define ourselves by family relationships, we define ourselves by this. And what horror does is it strips it all away, tosses you in, and then at its very best and redemptive, it goes, and now you're strong enough to get out, either on your own or through, you know, grace, because horror is a very religious, has a lot of religious overtones and underpinnings. Even if you're not a believer, it's like it's positing worlds beyond this one, which has a lot to do with belief systems. Mm-hmm. And so I love that they did that. They stripped away all their money from the moves, the fact that she hasn't had work forever because she's a composer, songwriter who hasn't worked since the babies. You know, she's just getting her feet wet. He's a teacher, so he makes all of $18 a year, and then they don't get sleep on top of it. And he's a high school teacher. It's not like he's teaching, you know, he's the dean at Harvard. He is teaching, career a-holes for 10 hours a day for less than an In-N-Out guy makes,
And then they have these medical bills and everything else.
And then the medical bills and everything. So by the time he gets into the further, again, it was one of those moments where I would look at my wife and I go, they took everything. They took everything before he got here. Everything that happens from here on out is the only thing that matters in his life.
Really fast, I just want to add to what you were saying about religion. I never understood how so many religious people in my life are anti-horror, because the Bible in and of itself is filled with horror stories.
Oh, right. Right.
And last I checked, if you believe everything that's in it, then Satan's like the ultimate horror, right? So, but I used to argue with this priest, because I went to Catholic grade school and high school, and I had this priest that screamed at me that I was going to hell for liking Jason movies and this kind of stuff. Yikes. And I was like, this is so weird to me, because Jason's telling me the exact same thing you're telling me. Don't have sex. Don't do drugs. Don't go out doing this. Stay home, listen to honor your mother, even if she's out killing everybody. But spoiler. No, I couldn't resist that one. But it was really weird when I was 11 and this was happening to me, because I literally couldn't make sense of, why are you mad when Jason wants the same things you want?
Right. And well, so, it's because it's job competition.
He's probably just jealous that he couldn't kill teenagers too.
Right.
But,
for sure.
No, but so many people in my life have been, there's too much bad things in the world. Give yourself to Jesus. Why are you concentrating on these horror things that you write? And that's so strange to me, how they think that the two can't coexist.
Coexist, yeah.
Because a lot of horror is about the hope. When everything else is gone, this is your hope. And if that's not the message that most religions at least claim they're doing, I don't know what is. So
yeah. On my Twitter feed, the pinned tweet is, people ask me why I write horror, and I answer, because horror is the genre of hope.
Yeah.
And when someone asks me, when they don't understand in my congregation, thankfully, I have very, very rarely bumped into somebody who was you're going to hell, but I have bumped into people who go, so explain the dichotomy that I am seeing, from their perspective, about being the super religious guy who doesn't like the F word all the time, and being a horror writer. And I tell them, okay, well, I'm going to tell you about the most terrifying horror story I've ever read. Just bear with me for a sec. I read it recently. It's about an everyman, most good horror is. And it seems like a case of mistaken identity at first, because he's jailed for crimes he didn't commit, but then he's taken out and beaten within an inch of his life and then crucified. And at that point, everyone's like, oh, we're talking about Jesus now, because that is a horrific story. But the thing that makes it not a bad story is the fact that there's the end part. And I'm not trying to preach at all. This is not a religious thing, but literary devices wise, even if it was fiction, it's oh, he's dead, he's lost it all. And then he rises on the third day, and you go, and there's the redemptive aspect. And so horror is like that. Even horror, the very best horror is redemptive in that it shows you, like I said, you're enough. After you've been dropped in that chasm, you have it within you, or with grace, help from others, help from spirits, or whatever it is, you'll rise out back into the light. And that's what makes the best horror. But even if you're talking about horror that is hostile, that exists to toss you into the gutter, swirl you around in the sewage, and then be and that's life, it's a lie. And it's still redemptive, because the only way it works is for you to go into that movie and go, well, this is wrong, this is terrible, this is scary, which means it's pointing out the moral rightness, the framework of the universe we actually live in. So horror exists as a method of either leading us to redemptive attributes, showing us redemptive possibilities, or at least reminding us of the reality of a world that isn't this fallen, if you will, that isn't this full of grotesquerie. Because, if you're a refugee who grew up having his friends blown up in classrooms and dealing with landmines and stuff. You watch Saw and you're like, oh, this is like Recess. You know, it's not scary.
Right.
But for us, we go, oh, I do live in a world that's pretty good. And I get lots of fan mail saying, hey, thank you so much for reminding me that my life doesn't suck. You know, and you don't get that with science fiction. You don't get that with fantasy. You don't get that with any other genre.
I want to add, like, even the community as a whole, like when we're at cons and you're hanging out with other horror people, like these are some of the most giving, caring people I've ever met in my life. They go out of their way to like get people together or like, don't go to the bar alone, man. Come with us. We don't know you, but that's fine. You know, like, or just like there's Scares That Care where they raise, I think it's $30,000 every year and split it between 3 needy families, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't. And I'm not bashing other genres, but that's not my experience with other genres. My experience with other genres is more, don't look at my stuff, man. You're not on my level. And it's so weird to me that the genre that's supposed to be known for being terrible, terrible people because we think of these things are the ones that go above and beyond every single time that I've experienced, at least.
Yeah, we're dealing with our demons. You know who the meanest people are as comedians because they hate the world. Yeah. They make fun of everything constantly. And I don't mean every comedian. And I have comedian friends. And, you know, I don't want to be like, oh, he hates comedy. I think comedy is great. But horror is a genre that exists to say, hey, there's possibilities. Right. And so many other genres exist to say, if only we were at a different place, then everything is fine, which is very different from horror. Horror is saying we can be at that place. And other genres very often say, don't you wish you were us? And it is more of a club attitude. And also other genres, it's like you go to a horror convention and you say, what's your favorite? And here's the answer that you get most often. I love it all. I love it all. And yeah, if you had to pin me down, I love Insidious the most. But oh my gosh, Jason, Freddy, this, that, and the other thing. And if you go to, say, a fantasy convention, and this isn't knocking it at all, it's just kind of what I've observed, is they are fans who are divided into a product, you know. So I'm a Star Wars guy, and you have those famous like Star Wars versus Star Trek, which is better. And that's not good or bad, but it definitely, you go to horror and it's like, we all love horror and that's it. And there's less sectarian violence in horror that I've noted.
Oh man. So getting back to the film, I want to talk about The Further itself a little more. I would honestly like a movie that's almost completely set in the place we go in the first one. Like that whole world with those weird people I was talking about earlier. Oh. I don't know what all you would do with it, but I would love to see more of that. Like, I would like they're outside the house, you know, like I want to go in other houses or I want to know what else is on the streets, for instance. I don't know. Maybe I need an amusement park that's that place. I have no idea.
Like to see it from Dalton's perspective, because you're getting to see everything on the outside while he's in his coma. Yeah. So why not, what he's going through, at least in that world.
Yeah. And I think it would be workable. Here's the problem with when you set it in, any alien environment, be it an actual other planet or The Further, is that you run the risk of dissociating your audience. Or like, again, I've never been a teen banging in the woods. Yep. I've never been in The Further, and it's hard for me to care about it for 2 hours. But I do think you could do it because, he's in The Further as a living soul. Later on, it's pointed out, Lin Shaye's character is in The Further as a ghost, kind of stepping in and helping from time to time. Right. And that means there's endless possibility of other living protagonists or recently departed protagonists who inhabit this world for a time. And so I think you could step it into it more on an extended period and get away with it. I think it would work great if the Insidious world was kind of broadened to be a long-form television show. You could spend entire episodes in The Further and be great. Yeah,
I mean, the things The Purge has done with their series, like you could definitely move some stuff over. That would be great.
Yeah, totally.
Because even like watching the spirits trying to get over, that
so
would be
creepy.
Neat.
So creepy.
Like watching them go, like somebody who's stalking this one person for a while, but then like something's still keeping them out and they can't get through. But watching that struggle from their point of view, I would find that interesting. I don't know that it'd be a multi-million-dollar movie anymore, but they'd have me.
Yeah, I'd buy it. And that's more than saw Men in Black International. So there you go. It's got a better audience return. And that's another cool thing that Insidious did that was unusual too. So I'm going to add to my list is that end moment when all of the ghosts come piling out into their house, because that's what I always think is the scariest, kind of in the back of my head. If vampires are, if you're in a vampire movie, they always kill the vampire and then they're like, and now we're safe. I'm going, because if vampires are real, what other crap is out there? I would never sleep again. I would be on nothing but amphetamines and Jolt Cola for the rest of my life. And so I love that they took that and they went, there are lots. And guess what? Since we've opened the door, they're all just going to pile on through. And that was so much scarier than any moment in The Walking Dead with an equivalent number of zombies.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Don and I talk about this a lot. To me, zombies are always an afterthought. It's about the people, right?
Yeah.
But with something like this in Insidious, like when I was a kid, I was scared of the thing in my closet like so many others, right? But I had like this weird shadow thing going on because of where my window was set up. So and I had like these old metal closet doors. And so like there were like little slits where like I don't know why they're there other than so things in the closet can look out at you. There's no other reason to have this little slitty window thing going on.
They might as well just put a peephole that's one way from that side and just do away with the mystery.
But like, if I had seen this shit when I was like 9, and it would have ever occurred to me that if something's in my closet, there's a door and more of them can get through.
Oh my
Holy
gosh!
Shit, that would have destroyed me. I don't know that I'd be sitting here right now.
Because the scariest things about so many of these movies, Psycho is sort of the seminal example, is it takes a place where you're supposed to be safe and it makes you know that you're not. So like, that was actually the scariest movie moment. And Night of the Living Dead was one of the few moments where I was not just surprised, scared, but actively like psychologically changed by a moment. Is Night of the Living Dead, the original Romero one, where the zombies are surrounding the house and this lady is walking towards the house and it's a reverse angle. You see her back and she's nude, so you just see a butt, But what that told me is this woman was picked off when she was changing, going to the bathroom, or taking a bath. And all three of those are off limits for monsters. Like if Dracula shows up in my house rampaging and comes in my room and my pants are off, and be like, no, sir, take this outside until my pants are on and then you can murder me. Really, there's like areas that we think are off limits. In the Grudge movie, the scariest moment is when she looks under the blankets that she's wearing. She's in her bed, which is another no-fly zone. It's this, it's home base, like playing tag as a 5-year-old. I'm in bed, no touchy. And she looks under her own blankets and there's that frickin' white-faced ghost waiting for her. And so I love that Insidious said, none of these areas are safe. And not only that, but as dangerous as they are, they're not just momentarily dangerous. They are an open door for further danger.
I was going to talk about at least in this idea of not necessarily from the creator's point of view, but from the audience point of view, that we kind of need the further, not necessarily for the fear factor, but we need the further as at least in our minds to understand that there's something else out there.
Yeah.
If I do die, like Elise dies and then, she continues on and you see how she's helping people. So it makes you wonder, one, is there something else out there? Do we need something else to be out there? And then, what is it actually going to look like? I mean, is it going to be something where I'm not creeped out because I'm just as creepy as everything else? Is my death going to determine, what I look like, as far as the clothing and things like that, which I guess the common understanding
a creepy gray ghost.
Yeah. Is like, can you shape shift? Can you turn into something? I mean, there've been so many movies that have, tackled that whole idea of, how you would appear to yourself and appear to others once you die.
Yeah, we talked about that with Beetlejuice, how the main couple should have been covered in water and wet the whole time, because that's how they went out.
Oh, right. Right, totally. I think they did a nice little trick with the further on that level too, because again, one of the reasons I say that horror is, and James, you're alluding to it as well, horror's fine for religion because, I mean, if you think about it, a little girl is possessed of the devil and they call a man of God. I mean, they're just opening it up to serious questions about like what is afterwards. Mm-hmm. And I do like what Insidious did. It was like they pulled the curtain open, which is rare. They said, here's what's afterwards. But then they also added another curtain at the back of that room because obviously, Lin Shaye is not going to stay there forever. There weren't tons of good guys just running around being like, we're here too. We have a nice picnic on this side of the further.
We already got Dalton. He's over here watching Despicable Me.
That's right. He's listening to this great podcast that we just caught because time doesn't work the same. So when some douchebag gives a spoiler, we can hear it in reverse and it won't matter. But no, I thought it was really cool. They're like, because they said, here's what you've been missing in all these Poltergeist movies. Poltergeist is a perfect example. They go into the closet to get this girl. And in the newer one, the remake, which I liked two things about the remake of Poltergeist. One was Sam Rockwell, because I think he's fantastic in everything. And the other was they actually spent some time in the place where she was beyond the house, the little girl. And it wasn't terribly effective. I'm not going to say they did a good job with it, but I like that they showed it. And most movies, it's like, she's in a wall. Well, what's beyond the wall? There was a Twilight Zone where a little girl falls into a cross-dimensional portal and she's this deaf or this blind girl, and they can hear her in the walls, and trying to get her back is really hard. And the thing that kept me up as a kid about that was imagining the world she was in beyond the wall. It wasn't the fact that she was gone. It was the fact that she was somewhere and I didn't know what it was. And so the further, it was so cool that they did take you. And I'm with you, James. I mean, I get that some people hated it and I go, okay, I can see that. But I just thought it was neat that they did it.
It's fun that you bring up Poltergeist because I was actually reading an interview with Lee Winnell, and he was saying that, I'm going to read this so I get it exactly right. He said, our movie is like the much cheaper non-studio version of Poltergeist. And then he went on to explain the studio system and how that, changed things back then versus what we're doing now. And I was like, wow, that's a really good, fast summary right there.
Totally is. It's got all the same story beats. And it's, again, Poltergeist is effective because it's about this nuclear family that has their home invaded by this presence, and they've worked so hard to get to this point in their lives, and now it's all upended. And we all fear that. I mean, like, even I do okay as an author. I'm a bestseller and stuff, and every once in a while I kind of look at my wife and go, Amazon could decide tomorrow we're not doing ebooks, and there would go 80% of my income.
Yeah.
And so having your safe places, the thing invaded, and the things that you've accomplished stripped away through no fault of your own. It's not like I go, I better not write a letter to Jeff Bezos and say, Jeff, you should shut down Kindle, because then it would be my fault. And I'm not worried about that. But I'm worried about, like, well, the stockholders decide there's more money in actual sending packages, and so we're going to do shipping and handling and sending physical products, and we close Kindle, and I'm hosed, and that also goes along with being a grown-up, is you realize how many more ways your life does not depend upon you.
Yeah. Well, and even something like being an author where you're doing it because you don't want to be controlled by others, so to speak, and then you're still controlled by others.
Yeah,
so.
I tell people I just have a million bosses now instead of, I have a million general managers, my audience, and then I have one boss who's kind of a dick all the time, and that's me.
So the jump scare that got to me was in the trailer, and that's why it got to me. So it's the one where the guy's outside the window and then he's suddenly in the room.
Oh,
by the baby,
so good.
Right? Because it was in the trailer and because I had seen it so many damn times, I thought I had the timing down.
Nope.
And I don't know, but I would love to think that James Wan was like giggling his ass off, like we're gonna throw the timing off so that it still screws with him in the theater, because it did. And I hope that's exactly what he did, because I adore James Wan. But like I thought I had that timing down, and when it didn't hit, there was that fraction of a second in my head where I'm like, wait, what? And then it hit, and I was like, I jumped, and I was like, motherfucker, I knew this was coming,
Right.
And my wife was sitting there laughing at me, and she doesn't like watch scary movies, but she went to Insidious, and I'm like, you didn't jump and I did. Well, damn it. but that little kid staring at the wall totally got to her. So haha, sucker.
Nice. Yeah.
But
it's super fun to be prepared for something and still have it catch you. I mean, that's real expertise. I remember going to see Misery in the theater, and I'm with my friend, and my dad was, I'm not speaking with any hyperbole, he was the world expert on Stephen King for about 20 years. So I understood horror growing up. There was screaming in the next room constantly because my dad would be watching some scary movie, and he talked about it with us, and I'd read Stephen King, by the time I was 9, I had started reading him and kind of thing. And so we're watching Misery, and it's James Caan, he's in bed and laying there, and it's storming, and I lean over to my buddy Chad that I'm watching with, and I'm, trying to be cool. I'm like, look, it's lightning, and it's going to go, and it's going to be her, Kathy Bates, is going to be looking down, and lightning's going to light up her face, and it's going to be really scary, but I won't be scared. Neither will you, because I just told you, because we're badasses. And then it happens, right? And it was the greatest thing, because I did, to be fair, we were talking about bringing kids in, and here's one of the awesome things about kids is they buy in so much more as adults. It's like going to Disneyland with a little kid. It's like so much more fun in so many ways. So we're in this theater, and up in the front of the theater, there was 2 rows of, I would guess, 14-year-old girls. They seriously looked like they were on some like outing, and they had come to Misery. And so the lightning happens, the thunder, and this scream starts at the front of the theater and rolls its way back to us. And it hit me and Chad like a wave and carried us away. And I mean, it was like in a scene from a show where nothing's going to get us. And then we looked at each other, beat, mouth open together. I mean, as high-pitched as any of the girls. And to date, that's my favorite moment. That's a great movie, great book. And every time I think of Misery, I think of that moment because the filmmaker got me. Even though I was ready for it, I still got hit. And that's such a delightful feeling. Those are the moments where, like, as a creator, I'm sitting in the corner just because I work in public places that have Wi-Fi and a refillable Diet Coke. It's kind of my requirement. And I'll just sit in the corner and giggle. And it's the moment where I surprised myself, and I'm going, no matter who's reading this, this is going to surprise them. They're going to think they understand what's happening, and it's still going to catch them when it does. Those are just delights.
That's awesome. So, Don, I know we were originally going to talk all 4 Insidiouses. So why don't you go ahead and tell
I think the plural is
3...
Insidii.
Insidii. Sorry, I didn't realize. But no, Don and I saw Insidious 3 together, and it's my favorite theater experience. And so I thought I would let him tell it so that I'm not just the racist asshole over here. But no, I figured you were going to tell that if we talked all 4, so you should tell it now.
Well, children, James came to me one day and said, I need to go see movies where black people see movies.
That is not what happened at all, but I'll accept it.
No, actually, what James said was, oh, man, we got to go watch Insidious 3 at the AMC downtown because I'm sick of watching movies with white people.
Right.
I think that's what you said, right? It was something close to that.
No, I think basically it's a similar sentiment, but it was.
God damn it! Let me just finish the story. So anyway, so James basically says
exactly what happened, word for word.
There you go.
Yeah, it's like I want us to go see Insidious. Let's go see it at the AMC 24 downtown.
Audience.
There's got to be a better audience there. So we go, very racially diverse audience, and I think even during the discussion, I said, "Man, you got to see a horror movie with Black and Latino people. Like, there's no other experience like it." Like, I was living in Gilbert at the time, and every time there was a horror movie, there was like no it was there was the screams and the gasps and things like that during the movie, but there wasn't the motherfucker, don't open that door. There wasn't any of that stuff.
Right. So that white people think they're too cool for it. They're like, oh no, somebody's going to see me jump, instead of thinking, hey, no one gives a shit that I'm sitting here. They're not watching me.
And the thing is, we just come from a more puritanical culture that it's like less okay to show emotion immediately.
Yes. All right, continue.
Well, for that, it's entertainment, right? So for the horror films, just like you go to a comedy show, you laugh, you might say something back, not heckling, but you might say something back with respect to the joke or to the comedian. But the same thing is with the horror film. So, the crowd that was there, it was outstanding. And James says that he's tried to look again. I don't doubt that he's done it, but
I have, definitely.
That crowd has never been replicated. Because
at least in Phoenix, yeah.
Well, at least anything we've gone to, where every time there was some foreshadowing, the music, you could hear people saying like, "Oh my God, this is the stupidest girl I've ever seen in my life. Why are you going to open the door?
You dumb white bitch, you deserve to die."
Right.
That was the line.
That's awesome.
And that's my favorite part of horror movies, is seeing them when they're in the theater to get other people's reactions to it. Yeah. Not actually, the screaming is what my wife and I, we were watching, and this is why I was getting mixed up, The Conjuring. And so there's this scene. It's a very basic scene, has nothing to do with scaring anybody, freaking anybody out, or anything like that. It's where one of the girls goes in the crawl space because she was sleepwalking or something. And so she's just sitting in the crawl space, asleep or semi-conscious. And so there's this woman that's sitting in front of us, and she checks her phone. I don't know, it was Tinder, Facebook, whatever. She was checking her phone, trying to get something. She looks up, and the little girl is just sitting there. And she lets out the weirdest scream, gasp ever. It was one of those things where there were like all these different octaves to it. So she's like, and no one else everybody else is, what the fuck happened? What happened? Oh my God. And so she just sits there and hangs her head.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because it was one of those moments of the movie where you weren't supposed to, you weren't allowed, you weren't permitted to have this moment where you could, be emotional or just, react in that way. So and what ended up happening is a few people laughed about it, but then right after that, there was a scene where there was like a jump scare or something else that was going on, and the entire audience had already been thrown off by her. So the timing that I think Juan did that one as well. The timing that had been set up to actually foreshadow the next scare was gone. So the entire theater was gone. Like they were entirely caught up by the next jump scare. But I loved it.
That's fantastic.
It is fun being any movie, not just horror. I mean, being with any group that's willing to buy in and physically enthuse over. I will remember forever another one. I went and saw what was it? Aladdin. Total stereotypical from the level of what it's doing Disney movie. And I saw it at the El Capitan Theater, which is this really nice theater in downtown Los Angeles. And it was like a 2 a.m. showing. So I file in with like 5 or 6 of my very white friends. And when we sit down, and we are surrounded by Hispanics within 5 minutes. I mean, we were just this 5 or 6 little white island in a sea of, South and Central America. And we were kind of concerned because it looked like gang people too. I mean, it really did. It was like, the 52 Streeters just decided they're not going to go kill anybody tonight. Let's catch a Disney movie. And so we were kind of like
You ain't never had a friend like this, gang.
Oh, right. And we had gotten there first. So we're in the really good seats right in the middle. So we're surrounded by everybody, and we're like shrinking into ourselves, which is, it's a racist attitude, but we were young kids and we didn't know any better kind of thing. And I loved it because by the end of the movie, it was so cool. They're getting into it. And you're right. Like white people don't get into it at the same level culturally. And I totally remember one of this big gang looking guys like, get away from Jafar. Can't you see he's bad for you? Oh, and he was like so frustrated screaming at him. And he looks over at me and I'm like, that's right, she is bad for it. I didn't say that, but that was totally in my head, we're all bounded together by ties beyond race. We agree Jafar is bad. And but it's true. Sometimes
you guys all just hated him because he was Middle Eastern.
Yeah, it was all of us were joined in that racism against that one ethnic group. No, but it was really, it is fun to get to an audience that has that, and kids are better at it. Certain cultures are better at it. There's always the joke about black people talking back to the audience or to the movie screen. And if I'm in an audience like that, where I do not like people making jokes at a horror movie, because I'm like, we get it. You are too macho, manly, studly, whatever to be afraid. So rather than allow yourself to be afraid, you will ruin it for everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that sucks. But if people are screaming and yelling like, why? I love that. I think that's fantastic if you can luck into that audience.
Well, my favorite lady.
I've got to pitch a TV show where my mom just watches the movies and watches the horror movies because it doesn't matter where she is. She's talking back to the screen. So she will watch something at our house and she's sitting there. I don't think I've seen this before. And then 5 minutes into it, she may have seen it, may not have seen it, but then she's talking back and answering questions, asking herself questions, answering those questions, talking back to whoever the villain is. Right. This is just stupid. I don't understand. If the ghost is in the house, why don't you take your ass somewhere else? And she saw Ready or Not, and she was sitting there. She's like, "This was the stupidest horror movie I ever saw in my life."
Blasphemy!
No, not because of that. Not because of that. She was sitting there. It's like, how the hell is this little girl going to allow them to chase? Shouldn't she have gotten indications that they were going to kill her from the beginning? They get sour face and say, "Oh, we're going to play hide and seek," and then you get all happy and shit and walk down the hallway and hide. It's like you could tell something bad was going to happen. Oh, I hated that movie.
Oh, I loved it. That's awesome. I did that actually at the movie Lights Out, which was the most fun I've had ever, I think, at an extraordinarily dumb movie. Like every single choice anyone makes in that movie is stupid, given the rules that they're operating within. But it was fun because I'm sitting there. First of all, the scary parts were effective. They did a good job visually, and they had some clever scares. But my wife was embarrassed because I'm going, "Why would you do that?" at the top of my lungs, Oh, don't take any of the actual lights. Bring the candle by all means, because a ghost can't blow that out, And so my wife was not a fan of that, but it is fun to just let loose and be like, okay, I'm in this. Not only am I in it like emotionally, but I'm actually going to participate in the movie.
Yeah, no, I love those audiences, man. My favorite at that Insidious 3 was this woman. It was the most stereotypical, like straight out of a movie shit I've ever seen, because she was instantly like, "Oh, hell no, right. no," said no like 19 times in a row. And then she's just like, "Motherfucker," and that was it. Like, it was just like, did that just happen? Like, am I really sitting here and that's happening? That's amazing,
right. Right. So, I just stumbled onto a very badly written comedy just now.
So I have this crazy thing where, to me, Insidious 3 is like one of the best movies ever. And it's probably not great. And because of that experience, it is. So I need to find a theater that's like that all the time. Because
every single time.
Horror is so made for that. Like it's like when you go to a haunted house. Like, it's not fun on your own. It's bringing the group and having that
shared
community experience of crap going wrong.
Yep.
That's what makes it great. So, yeah.
And that's what makes it bearable, too, is because, like, the first thing they do in every horror movie or show or whatever is they isolate the character. They'll either isolate a small group, or even better, they isolate the individuals within the group, which is why there's the whole, like, we got to separate and examine things on our own trope. And we almost need that community feeling when we're watching a really good horror flick. Not only I think we're thinking to ourselves, we're going, "Wasn't that fun? I'm so glad you were with me." And what we're really saying is, I was going to wet myself unless I had someone with me. But that's again, that goes the redemptive process of horror, because at the end you get to like reach out and hold somebody. I love that when I do get my wife to a scary movie, she grabs me, and I'm like, that's right, I am needed. I do more than furniture moving. That's right, and likewise, I remember seeing What Lies Beneath, and I saw it with a bunch of we're college guys, and it's not like the most terrifying movie. We're all in our early 20s. We're studly people, but we had been moving all day long, so we're all going into it exhausted. It was like 11 o'clock show, and after moving someone's house for 14 hours, we naturally are like, let's go see a movie. And so we're in there with low emotional and psychological defenses, and by the end of it, we are all holding hands, and we're straight white males at an age where this is not okay. And I mean, we're just clutching each other. I'm so glad you're here, Todd. You too, Michael Brent. And we love that. And I think horror, again, it does that because it's like you need to hold on to somebody, is what it says. And then the second thing is, and aren't you glad there's people to hold on to?
I mean, that kind of goes back to the hope thing that you've been talking about. It's, it makes you reconnect with people around you. If I don't know why I would do this, but if I went to the latest rom-com with a bunch of guy friends, I don't think we'd have that same experience.
No, what happens with guy friends in a rom-com is you're all like, we were just here because Insidious was sold out, and then you slouch in the last row. You're not going to sit right in the middle and be like, yeah, Sandra Bullock kissed the crap out of that guy,
You had me at hello, man.
Right. It's and it's a joke, the tough guy kind of stereotype, but there's like cultural norms that it's not okay to break out of, and that does hinder a lot of the effectiveness of certain kinds of genres, and horror has none of that. It strips it all away and says, all right, we're going to rip you to pieces and then put you back together again, and hopefully you'll remember why you're better.
So I don't want to keep you guys on here forever, so do we have anywhere we still need to go with the film that we haven't?
Oh my gosh, just that it's a fun film and people should watch it, and definitely give PG-13 a chance. It's not about a rating, it's about if they do it well. And I always tell people, how do you know a great movie? A great movie, I think Casablanca is a perfect movie. I also think Dumb and Dumber is a perfect movie because you look at what they're trying to accomplish, determine if that's a good thing, and if it is, you determine how well they accomplished it. And if it did, then it's a great movie. So, don't look at it and go, oh, it's a PG-13 movie. Look at it and go, okay, I hope they knock it out of the park given the restrictions. And given the restrictions, if they do knock it out of the park, it's going to be that much more exemplary of a film.
Well, I mean, Don's heard me say this, but one of my favorite horror movies is a PG movie, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh my gosh, The Tunnel. Nobody should be allowed to watch little baby chickens pecking themselves to death.
Exactly.
Oh.
But everything about that movie is fucked up. There's... I've compared it to Saw in the past, in that each of these children has their own little test, and what Charlie gets at the end is he wins and gets to become Jigsaw's apprentice, basically.
I love it.
And but at the end of the day, it's a horror movie. It scared the crap out of me as a kid. Between the tunnel scene and the psychedelic crap going on, and even just like the Oompa Loompas were a little off-putting when I was younger. Now I think they're great. But now I'm terrified of 4 old people that just lay in bed and make this kid do everything for them. Yeah. Like they're like 50 something. They're not even in there like, or no, they've been in there for 20 years. So like they went in bed when they were like 50 something, like it's weird.
Yep.
There's something really off about all of that. So.
Oh, it's every single environment in that movie is a dangerous environment, a hostile environment. Even when he wins the golden ticket, the first thing that happens is the guy grabs him because everyone is trying to, literally, it's a zombie scene. Everyone is trying to rip Charlie Bucket to pieces. And, the movie's version of Daryl grabs him and goes, you run fast and don't let anyone know you have the ticket. So it's definitely...
There he goes running with the ticket, everybody.
Yeah, right. Look at him go. I never would have thought of it as a horror movie, but you're totally right.
I'll send you a link to my rant about it from Phoenix Fan Fiction this year.
The movie that scared me the most.
And for the rest of you, I'll put it on the Necronama.com Facebook page so that you can check it out there.
Crap out of that. The movie that scared me the very most as a kid ever was Watcher in the Woods, which is this PG Disney movie again, and it was one of their forays when they were trying to do more live action, different stuff. So they did Something Wicked, This Way Comes, which was marvelous. It starred Jonathan Pryce, if you've ever seen him. And they did Watcher in the Woods, and I can remember watching Watcher in the Woods and going, well, I'm gonna go in my bedroom and kill myself now because I do not want to be here when nightfall comes. So yeah, the rating matters a lot less than the skill of the people behind it.
Well, I don't have very much left to say about it other than I love Insidious. I love that they went in a new direction. And I love that if I watch it today, it still holds up. It's fantastic. I know it's not that old, but things time out pretty quickly in our society now. Yeah. And I think that like the fear of the little voice on the baby monitor, man, it could be my cat walking into that room, and that shit terrified me. So seeing it in the movie, that sticks with me, you know? But no, I think Insidious, especially the first one, is just almost perfect. I love it. So, Don, you have any final thoughts on Insidious?
No, other than I will perpetually keep confusing Insidious and Conjuring, and because that's just how my brain works.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, you know, when you watch one, then just say, nope, that wasn't it, and watch the other one, and then you can still just keep watching two great films.
No, and then a week later, I'm like, yeah, that Insidious movie was really great when the doll came to life and was killing.
Yeah.
Hey,
that could be an Insidious 5. We don't know yet. So
they are in the same universe, though, right?
No, they're not in the same universe.
Oh, they're not.
The Conjuring universe is different than the Insidious universe.
Okay. Because I know that at least they're the Easter eggs that with other James Wan movies. Yeah. At least in this one, because there was the little chalk drawn jigsaw or chalk drawn
Billy the puppet.
Yeah.
With a supposed bow tie that was clearly an 8. Advertising Saw 8 before it happened. Yeah. But the bow tie is like it's crooked enough that it's clearly an 8. And James Wan was like, no, that was a bow tie, man.
Oh my gosh. That's rad. Yeah, the Easter eggs I do that too. Every once in a while I'll throw in one of my books, you know, like somebody was reading a book and what book are you reading? Oh, it's this one about, and then they'll describe one of my other books, you know, and just, so they're not in the same universe, but I do like it when filmmakers kind of wink a little bit and go, hey, if you're a fan, super fun.
Well, cool. So I think that about wraps it up. So Michael Brent, why don't you give us where we can find you on social media and anything else you'd like to plug before we go?
Social media, I'm super easy. If you just type out Michael Brent, all one word, you don't even have to write Collings. You will just get all me. So just type Michael Brent Collings into Google and you'll find my website and my Facebook page, my Twitter, everything. I do have an official website, and it's at writteninsomnia.com. Written Insomnia, stories that will keep you up all night. And please do check out Scavenger Hunt. It comes out Halloween Day, and the advanced reviews have been dynamite so far. It's got an advanced review page on Goodreads, and it's got like a 4.87 out of 5 average right now. So
nice.
It's shaping up as one of my best reviewed books, and hopefully it'll be a big launch and people will really enjoy it.
Very cool. So
thank you guys so much. It was a hoot.
No, thank you for being on.
Thank you for being here. Next week, I believe that we're talking about The Shining. I might be editing that out later when I know for sure. So we'll see you next week on the Necronama.com. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we hope you all have a great Halloween and enjoy some scary stuff and pick up Michael Brent's new book.